Hi, welcome, welcome, welcome. Isn't it funny sometimes how we as people can be fixated on happiness, on what we want, what happiness means for us, and what that looks like essentially. I spent my 20s studying happiness, and the lessons I learned through that have been amazing. What I wanted to do today is share with you what some of those lessons have been, and essentially how you can help yourself to move forward and get to understand what happiness means for you and what that is. Before we go into this, what I want to do is just start off by asking you, what is your definition of happiness? What does happiness mean to you? And what does it look like to you? And what does it feel like to you? I'll start off by sharing a little story from myself. I don't even know if that makes sense. But early in my 20s, I decided to go study the science of what happiness was and what made life worth living. And when I got there, it was like I didn't know what to expect. But the more I started exploring what happiness actually meant for me, it became a little bit more clearer that before I was chasing the wrong things, or I was chasing something I didn't need to be chasing, something that was already there for me, readily available 24/7, essentially. So, my definition of happiness is essentially living a life that works for me and being of service to other people. And essentially, what that means is I'm a person who likes and loves to help people. I am motivated by making a difference in the world. I thrive in environments that require me to use like my skills to be able to connect with people. And those things bring me peace of mind. Knowing that I'm making a difference, a little small difference in the world. And that's essentially what happiness for me is for me. And I don't know how to explain that to people, but essentially it's about me knowing I'm making a difference, living in a life that works for me, truly authentic to me, and just having that inner peace and inner peace and that just that calmness within myself. As you can see, that definition has nothing to do with wealth, and it has nothing to do with, you know, what I own, materialistic stuff. It has nothing to do with that. And I think we live in a world where sometimes we are made to feel that happiness should equate to something else. Happiness should be, you know, this grand thing that we have. But actually, when you look deep at happiness, that's not what the research says. That's not what the study says. And that's not what people say. And through my 20s, what I've done is I spend time actually asking people about happiness. Like, what is happiness? What does it mean to you? And when you actually start asking people happiness about happiness and what they want and what they're looking for, because most people say they want to be happy. I hear that all the time. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. You want to be happy. But what is that? How can you want something if you don't know what that is for you? And if you're being led essentially by society, by culture, by friends, by family, rather than actually establishing what that is for yourself. And that's something I had to learn in my 20s, that happiness is not going to look the same as it does for you, as it does for me. Those two things are going to look completely different. I've known people who have said, you know what, money will bring me happiness. This is what happiness is for me. And fair to them, everyone's happiness looks different. But the simple thing when it comes to happiness is always and readily available should you want it. It's there available 24/7 to you if you want it. However, as people, we can complicate things for ourselves and our mind can play tricks on us. And sometimes we can feel like where we are, who we are, or our circumstances is not good enough. Just a quick little research data stats. So there is a lady called Sonia Lyubomirsky, and she's a leading researcher in positive psychology, in happiness, essentially. Years ago, she was given like a big grant, 7-figure grant, to do research on what happiness is. And she spent a few years researching happiness and what made people happier and what people defined as happiness, essentially. She wrote a book called The How of Happiness. And in that How of Happiness, she spoke about how 50% of our happiness is genetic, so it's biological. So, sometimes you can't help but, the hand that you're dealt. We all have different hands that we're dealt, and that's just the reality of life. So some people are already born with like genetics that are happy. Some people got mental health issues, mental health conditions within their families, within their bloodline. So sometimes that can set them off. So depending on your family history, sometimes you're already 50% a little bit less happier than someone next to you, for example. And then 10% of that, so out of 100, so she calls this the happiness pie. 50% is biological, 10% is actually our circumstances. What do you think the 40% is? I'll let you have a think. But the 40% is intentional activities. So 50% biological, 10% in your circumstances. People tend to believe, many people argue, and there's been, criticism about how is it only 10% of our circumstances have impact on our happiness. But that's what the survey, that's what the research showed. And then you've got the 40%, which is intentional activities. And this is essentially things that you do as a person. And these are things that bring you more happiness and more meaning into your life. But the other thing also is that there's 2 types of happiness. So there's one called hedonic and there's one called eudaimonic. So one is pleasure, one is more about deep happiness, about meaning and purpose. So hedonic happiness is about pleasure, right? It's all about pleasure. It could be like, those peak moments, like, I just want to have a bar of chocolate. I want to watch TV. I want to, just simple pleasures. There's a difference between pleasure and there's a difference between deep happiness. And eudaimonic is that. So if I yeah. So if I've lost my tab, bear with me. So if as a person you want to focus on to increase your happiness, or you want to get a little bit more understanding on your happiness, the issue is with hedonic happiness, it's short term and it's fleeting. So it's something that happens like now, it's quick, it's over and done with, and that's it, you're done, right? And then eudaimonic is more long term, it's more purposeful, it's more meaning and purpose. So when I explained my definition of happiness, what that was at the start, I tend to fall more on the eudaimonic type of happiness rather than the pleasure side. Don't get me wrong, you need both. You need to be able to function with both sides. You can't just function on one without the other, because we need both as people. But the balance has to be good enough to ensure that you're functioning at a level that works, that both sides are being met. There's people I've met, they're like, well, I don't care about the eudaimonic happiness, but long term we do, right? And short term, people who chase the short term hedonic happiness, the pleasure, they're the people, it could be drugs, could be alcohol, could be, those peak moments, the adrenaline type of situations. Those type of people are constantly chasing that, chasing. But the thing is, that's never going to be good enough, because you're always going to be chasing a high that doesn't last. And chasing a high that doesn't last is detrimental to actually you as a person and your well-being. The reason that is only temporary, and it's only a temporary high. And the more you chase that, the more you're not going to find it. So this is where the other type of happiness comes in, the eudaimonic happiness. And it's very much about, what's bringing you more meaning and more purpose into your life, and what is it that you need to do to get there? How do you identify that? Something simple for me was just identifying my passions. What am I good at? What do I enjoy? What are things that I do that make me feel at ease? That, like, you don't feel like you're doing nothing. Like, you're doing something, but you're doing nothing at the same time. That's how you feel. And one of the biggest predictors of happiness is also relationships with people. So the ability to connect and being able to connect with other people. And another one is also to be able to connect with yourself, having that deep inner sense of connection with yourself, but also having that deep inner connection with other people. We're humans, we thrive off relationships. That's another big predictor of happiness. In my 20s, there's times I spend chasing happiness. And I was like, oh, you know what? This is what's going to bring me happiness. When have you heard yourself say this? I'll be happy when. I'll be happy when ... I'll be happy when I have a boyfriend. I'll be happy when I get a girlfriend. I'll be happy when I'm married. I'll be happy when I have children. I'll be happy when I have a car. I'll be happy when, I get a new job. I'll be happy when, endless. And it's like you're waiting for that moment to come to be happy, rather than just appreciating and being grateful for what you already have right now. Positive emotions such as gratitude, happiness, joy, love, they're big predictors to happiness. And the simple one that you can implement every day into your life that will make you feel a little bit better about your life. Sometimes a whole lot better, depends on who you are. It's just simply practicing gratitude. That's a positive emotions that helps you to gain perspective into your life. And it also helps you to pause in your life and to be able to see, actually, how far have I come? So another thing about, happiness is how you show up for yourself, and how you show up in the moment to life. It's about the art of showing up. There could be times in life when you feel like the whole world is crumbling, nothing makes sense. We all go through that. That's the reality of life, And you feel like maybe you don't have it quite together, and you're kind of somewhat a little bit all over the place. We all go through that. And sometimes life seems confusing. And the best things that you can do is to show up for yourself in that moment. That is simply just by being kind to yourself and having empathy and compassion for yourself. It starts there. Because when we get like that, it can be really tricky for us to see life from a broader perspective. That I'm alive, I'm here, I'm well, I'm functioning, It could be like, oh, this, that. Nobody likes me, everybody hates me, whatever it is. Like, my life is not where I want it to be. And it can feel like life is your enemy. And actually, life is actually your friend. And there's loads of things that are happening for your benefit. And once you stop and pause and gain perspective, then you're able to you're more able to show up for yourself. It's a mindset, essentially. It's a mindset that you understand that happiness is not always going to be there all the time. And yes, it is available 24/7, but you understand that life will life at the end of the day. And there's certain times you're just going to have to deal and cope and manage yourself in those situations. And how you do that is by gaining perspective. And how you gain perspective is by pausing. Sometimes just taking a moment. You sleep on it, you go for a walk, you go to the gym, you do whatever you need to just take a moment to pause, or sometimes just sit there doing absolutely nothing. And sometimes as people, we struggle to just sit there and do absolutely nothing, which is probably one of the easiest things we can do is to sit there and do nothing. But sitting there and doing nothing, sometimes our mind can start to play tricks on us. So the mindset is about happiness isn't determined by your circumstances, but rather is shaped by how you see them and how you see your life. And when I realized this, I had a shift in my life. There's a lot of times where in life when I was in my 20s where I had to sacrifice a lot of things, and I got myself in really difficult situations. But the one thing is, I always there was stuff that was chaotic going on around me in my life. I like to call it functioning in organized chaos. But deep down, I was happy. And to the average person, the external circumstances would probably would send them, a little bit over the edge, and this is tricky. And I am human. I'm not saying, oh, everything is good and gravy. It's about recognizing that yes, there's these circumstances in life that could affect your happiness and that are affecting your happiness, right? However, how you feel inside is also key. You could be looking really stressed outside on the outside to the average person, but actually deep down you are happy. And that there's that thing where people can't see that. And that's the beauty of happiness. Happiness sometimes is not something you can see. It's something that you are feeling within yourself. Even if to other people, it may seem like, wow, no, those circumstances are not ideal. But within yourself, you are happy. So that's why I asked her this, Star. What is your definition of happiness? What does it look like to you? And what does it feel like to you? For me, happiness is just simply being at peace with myself and understanding that what I'm doing has purpose and has meaning. And that brings me loads of joy. And that keeps me going. That gives me reason to keep going. And that mindset helps you to find peace and joy in the most unexpected places. Simple things that I like, that is simply, for example, nature, and just happiness in silence and just being present in the moment. And this helps you to be able to grow your mindset, like Carol Dweck, the mindset person. You either got a growth mindset or fixed mindset, and that helps you to develop more life satisfaction. And as I spoke about earlier, waiting for the right moment to be happy, I'll be happy when, will not help you to move forward as a person. You rather move forward knowing you're content. I remember, I've got it in my journal somewhere. I remember writing it. And I remember when I started studying happiness, and I remember I would grab it. I'll share it one time. It's right in front of me, but to get there is long. But and I remember saying that in life you're not always going to be happy, because that's unrealistic, because we ebb and flow as individuals. We ebb and flow through life. But it's understanding that you're content with yourself, with your life. And when you understand what that contentment looks like for you, it's much easier for you to keep moving forward, not to be expecting high peaks of happiness. And what can happen if you can't find that contentment with yourself or with your life? You will end up being like in a hamster wheel. And what they call this in happiness is basically called the it's like the hedonic adaptation. And what that means is that people constantly chase that, constantly, like, wanting more and more and more and more. For example, you're seeking those pleasure moments, that more to be happy. I'll be happy when. You get stuck in this hedonic treadmill, which means that you're constantly going round and round in circles, and in this treadmill, kind of going back and forth. And what happens in that situation is that as people, we adapt. And because we're adapting to the happiness and the circumstance, for example, those pleasure moments, we keep seeking them. And because we've adapted to it, it's no longer good enough. We need to move on to the next thing. And this is why eudaimonic is much more supportive in you being able to keep moving forward and functioning on a life satisfaction level. Whereas obviously the hedonic side of things is much more pleasurable, and it's needed here and there because we need peaks and drops of those. However, if you're constantly chasing, sometimes, you know, certain things will never be good enough no matter what you do, because as people, we adapt. So a simple example is, remember the last time or the first time you ever done experience something, and then it was like the best time you ever done it, and then done it again in future, you're like, oh, it wasn't that good. Like, it wasn't normal. It was it was it was, it was normal. So you adapt. So what happens is you constantly need to adapt as a person to what that means for you. Whereas when you have eudaimonic happiness at the core center of who you are as a person, what you do is you're going forward bit by bit because there's meaning and purpose in what you're doing, not for just the now. Sometimes when it comes to happiness, people are just looking for that moment right now that's going to bring them some sort of release, some sort of, that injection of happiness. But an injection of happiness right now is just only going to do it for now. And then 20, 30 minutes later, or an hour tomorrow, you're going to be looking for the same thing. But when you have meaning and purpose and have something like a long term goal that you're passionate about rather than the moment, it's much easier to keep going because you've got direction, you've got that life vision, you've got somewhere where you're trying to go. It's not focused on the now. But even when now is not going great, or now is just, a little bit pleasurable, or now is contentment, you keep moving forward because there's something that drives you to move forward. And that's something that's anchoring you. You need something that anchors you as a person when it comes to your happiness. What is that? It could be friends, it could be family, it could be a hobby that you do. You need something that anchors you in time and space to your happiness, what that means for you, not what society tells you. That, if you have the biggest cars or whatever it is, you need to establish whatever that is for you as a person. And, the other thing is, happiness is like going to the gym. Just like how you go to the gym to keep fit and, to lose weight, to, I don't know, gain muscle, whatever it is you go to the gym for. Gym people go there to feel better as well. Happiness is the same. You have to continuously work at it. You can't just sit there and be like, oh, I want to be happy. Happiness come to me. And then it's like, happiness, where are you? I can't find you. But then it's like, what is that specifically? What are you going to do? You can't just sit there and expect happiness to fall on your lap. You need to do something, even if it's like small steps. But the main thing is understanding what happiness is for you and what it feels like for you, and having your own definition that's not influenced by nobody else but you. That is all that matters. And then that way you start being able to understand the things that you need to do that bring you happiness and joy. And a simple task could be for you to just literally every day to ask maybe 5 people, what does happiness mean to you? Or what made you happy today? What made you smile today? Then you start to understand the little things that bring people joy, happiness, or how people define happiness, then you start to realize, oh, you know what, we are slightly different, but at the same time, we are slightly the same as well. And you start to gain a little bit more of those connections with other people. So it's about having that constant engagement with happiness and being intentional with your decision making when it comes to happiness. An example is, there was once I was in a situation that I was not proud of as a person. And that was really impacting my inner peace as a person, because I was experiencing a lot of shame and a lot of guilt in that situation. And I had to make a decision as a person. And making a decision as a person, it was a hard decision. It was either, okay, you know, this situation is not impacting your happiness in any way, and it's not impacting you as a person in a positive way, and actually is taking away from what you deem important and what you define as happiness, and it's impacting your inner peace, and it's essentially is going against the values that you stand for as a person. And I had to make a decision, like, you know what, this situation is has to end, because it's not impacting me in a positive way, and it's going against what I stand for and against what my definition of happiness is. And the moment I made the decision and I put the boundaries in place, I had so much more inner peace since I made that decision. And it's little simple things like that, because you know when you're going against something that goes against what you believe happiness is. And once you start to know what that is, it's much easier for you to be able to make decisions and be able to stick to them and have boundaries in place, that, you know, I'm going to protect my inner peace and I'm going to protect my happiness. And that way you won't spend time, you know, chasing happiness. You will actually have happiness based on the things that you're intentional with, the things that you're doing, the things that you're proud of as a person. um but the main thing is understanding that chasing happiness won't get you nowhere, but understanding what happiness for you is will help you to be able to function a bit more simpler and make life simple for you, because life is not always going to be easy, but you can make it easier for yourself by understanding simple things such as, what does happiness mean for me, and what does it look like, and what does it feel like? Because the more you chase and you try to get to that end goal of, you know, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll happy when, it's more about appreciating every day. And my breakthrough model that I use every day is like, what one breakthrough have I had a day, and how does that impact me as a person and my happiness? It's very, very simple. Like, I need to have a breakthrough. You know, today I've managed to do one thing that's brought me happiness, and this moved me. I've got peace because I've done that thing. What breakthroughs are you having every day that are impacting on your happiness? They don't have to be major. It just has to be simple breakthroughs. So every day, just ask yourself, maybe before you go to bed, what am I grateful for today? And what breakthrough have I had today that's impacted my happiness? And what's one thing that's made me smile today? Simple things like that. Then it will start to impact on your happiness. So, what I've learned simply is happiness is something that is unique to you as a person. It's not what the next person says. And once you're able to figure out what that is for you, rather than what society, other people says, it's much easier for you to have that inner peace and actually know when you are happy. Because happiness does not mean like, yay, I'm happy. Oh my gosh. They're the worst type of people, because that's not happy. But happiness does not mean like you look happy on the outside all the time. Some of the happiest people in the world are the ones who don't look happy all the time. And some of the saddest people in the world are the ones that look happy all the time. So happiness is an inner thing, is individual, is for you, you and yourself, within yourself. So if something else to leave with you today is, really understand what happiness is for you, so you're not influenced by outside sources, and then you can move forward knowing and making decisions and being intentional about what happiness is for you, and what it looks like for you, and what it feels like for you. And when maybe life is not aligning in that, you can say, okay, what can I learn from this situation, and how can I break through this to be able to allow me to keep moving forward? And also understanding that happiness is not all the time, but you can have contentment in everyday simple moments. The simplest things in life bring you happiness and joy. As long as you open your eyes, as long as you pause and you gain perspective, you will realize happiness is readily available for you whenever you want it. And it's just about you taking a moment and going within yourself and asking yourself those simple questions. Is this something that aligns with what my definition of happiness is and what happiness means to me? So I wish you all the happiness and joy in your happiness journey. And I hope you get to have a clearer understanding of what happiness is for you, and you start making decisions in a way that impacts your happiness in a positive way and your life in a positive way. Bye.